else for an entire album, some piano. And I had done like an EP. This is going to be tough now. I had done like, I don't know, we can probably be fine, right? It's like a mic, right? Yeah. We'll see what happens. Hey, this is Johan Lenox, and this is PODEKI.
PODEKI. This is PODEKI. What's up, guys? It's Adel, and I'm back with another video. Before you watch this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok, which will be at PODEKI Media, just right over here. As you see from the title of this video, I'm back with the artist interviews and the podcast version of PODEKI. So I'm glad to be back doing this, and I can't wait for you all to see this episode that we have in store. The next guest on this episode of PODEKI is a musician, producer, and composer who is based out of Massachusetts but is currently in Los Angeles. You may not know his name right away, but he is a very prolific producer, composer, and arranger for a lot of artists. He has worked with artists such as Kanye West, Travis Scott, Big Sean, Snow Allegra, Metro Boomin, Selena Gomez, Brockhampton, Shawn Mendes, and more. Recently, I caught this artist at his latest New York City show at the Bowery Ballroom, where he's currently opening up for the artist Riz Lovey. Check them out on their tour across the country in your local city and your local venue too. Over the past year, he released his latest album, What Do You Want to Be When You Grow Up? And over the past couple of months, he released the accompanied version of the album, which is a more stripped back, classical version, which is called Chamber, What Do You Want to Be When You Grow Up? In our talk, we go over some topics such as the inspiration behind what do you want to be when you grow up, and some other projects that he has been involved with, such as Metro Boomin's project, working with artists like Mr Hudson and 070 Shake, and what he has planned in store. My next guest is Johan Lenox. We're out here at the Bowery Ballroom with Johan Lenox. So, Johan, how's it going?
Pretty good. Just a little sound check. Feels good. We had like a really shitty travel day before we went to Boston, and Boston was last night, so we're all just like a little bit fucked up, and we're going to need a few days to get back to normal, but doing our best.
I mean, that's good, at least, getting into the groove of things. The start of this tour, a little hectic, a little bumpy at the start, but you'll ease right into it, basically, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
First topic I want to start off with is you had an album that came out last year, which is What Do You Want to Be When You Grow Up? After listening to the album, a few times, it has all these overarching themes about there's a lot of chaos going on in the world, also some themes about just growing up and reaching young adulthood, basically, and dealing with all the stress and anxiety and fears about growing up in the world around you. So were there any personal experiences that influenced you to talk about those certain themes?
It's just a general vibe of just how it feels all the time, and I'm like pretty nostalgic person, so I think a lot about the past, and I feel like I think a lot about the future and just kind of like where I am in time. So I feel like it's more just like trying to capture that feeling. I do think a lot of the lyrics were also like inspired by like the type of stuff that you see people post on Twitter and TikTok and shit like that, just about what it feels like to be alive right now, and just like this sort of like, oh, I'm broke, sort of the death of the American dream, and the feeling that like we're never going to reach like the type of adulthood that our parents supposedly told us we would or whatever. So I think like a lot of it was just trying to capture this feeling that like I feel like a lot of people have right now, just like what it feels to be like young in this country, beyond just like any specific details from my life. There is a lot of stuff from my life in there, but it's just all kind of like, I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but yeah.
So basically the state of how things are really right now in the world and society, basically, correct?
Yeah, just like the mood and just kind of like how you live your life when you feel like there's no real future sometimes, I guess, which is how I feel sometimes about the world.
Yeah, that sounds really great. There are a lot of tracks on there that do give that kind of feeling about it, like Get My Shit Together is like one of the top tracks that I like, it's like about growing up and just like trying to mature and everything like that. I know there's also the song Fuck This Town, which really has that kind of feeling where you're stuck in suburbia or a small town kind of feel where you just really want to get out of there and try to like strive for something bigger really, and just not that really small town kind of feel kind of mentality in a way.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, in those songs specifically, I guess like Get My Shit Together was inspired by just like coming home really late and just like increasingly like just I always like dump my stuff off just like on the floor when I get home, and then the next day is really hectic. Then the next time I come home, it's like even more stuff like piling up, and just being like, you know, when you arrive home, which is supposed to be this like place that's like safe from the chaos in the world, I guess, or you know, and then like your home is also just a fucking mess and chaos. It's sort of like, I guess it sort of takes a toll after a while mentally, whether you know it or not. So I feel like that was partly what that was about. I'm okay with that, I guess. Like, just not like I don't want to like live in like a, you know, some like adult, you know, house that's like really just boring to be in and sort of feels like a museum that you don't touch anything. You know, it's like I like feeling like that I'm able to like live that kind of chaos. I guess feels like a free type of freedom to me. And then Fuck This Town was inspired by just going home and to my hometown in Winchester, Massachusetts, and just like, you know, I go home a lot because my parents still live there, and just sort of seeing every year, like, you know, just watching how it changes. It feels like it'll be fun to go home, and I do feel nostalgic for it at first, but after a couple of weeks, it's just kind of like, I fucking hate this place, even though it's nothing. It's not about the place. It's just about the feeling it gives.
Basically, the feeling about just being at home and just like, oh, you know, same old things, really just around same surroundings and everything that you're used to when you grew up from there, basically. Yeah. All right, cool. Going off of that album, basically, there are, you know, several collaborators, features on that album. I know that 070 Shake is one of the artists featured on there, and you know, leading up to the release of this album, you went on tour with her across the country for the promotion of, you know, her tour, her new album that came out around that same time. So how was it collaborating with 070 Shake in the past, and also just experiencing this countrywide tour across all these kind of mid-sized venues, really?
It was really sweet. I mean, it was like the biggest shows I've ever done. Like, we did Terminal 5 in New York, just like 3,000 people. It was sold out. It's like the biggest show I've ever done. So that was like, it was just cool to do that, you know, and I've always wanted to do that. And that's the first time I really got to play big, even the one tonight. Like, prior to that, I hadn't played something even as big as this room. So it was just like cool to do that. But it was fun. I mean, it was a good test to want to have like live strings in my performance. So like, I have to find string players, and I like to hire them locally rather than paying people to travel with me, and it could get really expensive. So I just have different cities. I just have them pull up at soundcheck and sight read it, and that's made possible by the fact that I write sheet music out myself. So it's like, you know, I have this ability to do something where we don't even rehearse. Like, we really don't actually run the set. We just kind of spot check a couple places, just make sure they're comfortable. But it was really fun just like going to all these different cities and meeting all these different musicians, getting to talk to them about what it's like being a musician in their various cities, and just getting to expose them to my music. And I really liked that aspect of it. And it worked like really smoothly. So it was cool to see that was the case.
Yeah, that's really cool how you just said that you could just go to a local city that you're in and reach out to local musicians, and you could just sight read whatever you need them to play, and then they just kind of go on the go like that, basically. That's really cool.
Yeah, and then to the other question, yeah, I mean, I met 070 Shake like a few years ago, and we started working like on her previous album, Modus Vivendi, and then I just did some strings on one song on that one. But then we just kind of stayed in touch, and like her producer Dave Hamlin and I also just stayed in touch, and we just kind of like, I just got way more involved in the process of making the next one and had a really good time with it. And then, yeah, the tour was amazing. I got her on my album, which is really cool. She has like a little interlude. And then we're working on another one right now, so yeah.
That's awesome. Can't wait to hear that stuff. Another collaborator on that album is Mr. Hudson. And I know that when I saw you at your New York show last year, right before Memorial Day weekend, you brought out Mr. Hudson to do your collaboration on your album. You know, he did one of his songs too. So how did you guys get in touch, and how was it for him to be featured on your album and also to bring him out to your own show?
Yeah, Mr. Hudson, if people don't know, is like the dude who sings Forever Young with Jay-Z and Paranoid with Kanye, and a song called I Love You So on Watch the Throne, and there's a few other ones. And then he's also got his own project, which is great. He's a British dude. And he's like kind of the first artist I met and got to know who was at even that level. Like, And it was like, yeah, like when I moved to LA, he was like kind of the first person I met. And I just like randomly recognized him at a show. A person that I was working with, like just kind of who like works at a publisher, knew him. It was just kind of like introduced us. And I was wearing a tuxedo. He likes telling the story. I was wearing like a tuxedo, like with tails at this show. That was just
like a long-tailed tuxedo, basically. Or something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Like that's sort of like just a thing I used to do to stand out, I guess. And it kind of worked because he still tells that story. He's just like, I knew that guy was like different and and interesting because of that. And then I just kind of kept hassling his manager about doing a session with him. I played piano for him for a while. I went to Utah with him a couple times for some reason. Did shows there. I'm not sure why we went to Utah twice, but we did. And met a lot of other people through him. And I mean, I think we've become like good friends. And I just always, at some point, was like, I'm going to put him on a song at some point. And so, debut album felt like the time to do it. And we wrote that thing very quickly together in the studio from scratch, and then expanded it into a longer version that's on an album I just dropped, which is the chamber music version of that album that has just like an extended version I wrote with him. It has like, it's not just an interlude, it's a full song. So yeah, it's my guy. And then bringing him out for that show was awesome because he just happened to be in town, and I only figured it out that day. And I'm pretty sure maybe the day before I was just like, yo, do you want to like just come out and we'll do that song? I think do we like There Will Be Tears maybe? Yeah. Usually I do Forever Young with him, but he wrote the song There Will Be Tears that I think Frank Ocean sampled or remade or something like that. Sampled, yeah. So that was a cool moment for him too. Yeah.
Lost in many songs and see you smile. God, I did it for a while. Is it time for saying goodbye? There's no time for wondering why. I look out the window. There will be tears. I've no doubt. There may be smiles, but a few.
That's really nice how you guys, that story that you said, that first time you guys met was you stood out to him basically, and that's kind of true. Like if someone catches your eye who just like stands out and you just have these ideas like that person looks pretty interesting, I want to like talk to them, that's like a great way to introduce yourself basically in a way. So
I mean, the whole music industry is filled with people who dress like insane people, so it's like kind of hard sometimes. Like if you go to an industry event in LA that's like all music people, it's kind of like everyone looks crazy, and it's kind of hard to like stand out from that. But I think this was a show, so most of the people in the audience were just like more like normal fans. And then I think also even within the music industry, wearing a tuxedo with long tails would be pretty unusual. So yeah.
Yeah, that's real cool. You did mention about the chamber version of your album, which is a great pivot into the next question. So basically you released the chamber version of your album, which basically has a more stripped down tone, take away the synths and all that, and it's straight up classical music basically with your vocals and the features and everything. I know a lot of artists today, whenever they release a further enhancement of their current project, it's usually like a deluxe version or something with extra tracks. But you dropped basically the same project but complete different sound to it. Yeah. So do you feel that when you drop the chamber version of this album that has a different feel compared to the original version of your album?
Yeah, I mean, it's just pretty much, it's like a track for track, pretty much second by second remake of the album. I did an EP a few years ago where I treated my songs with the same way, and just people really liked that. It kept being like, we need a chamber version, get my shit together, we need a chamber version of this. I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll do a chamber version of the whole album. And that just comes from my like background, like in classical music, chamber music is just the term for like, instead of an orchestra or an opera or a choir, it's just music that's like a couple musicians playing together in a room, almost like a band or whatever, where they don't have a conductor, they just kind of go off each other. And so that's sort of why I use the word chamber, but I like not explaining it. People just are like, what the fuck does that mean? And so maybe they Google it, which is cool, so yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, what I really like about your music is that unique blend of what you just explained, the chamber music, the classical influences, where you could just tie in elements of hip-hop, pop, R&B. It's a very unique sound, really. And say someone's a classical musician, and they look into your music, do you think they could find influence of, like, stepping beyond their comfort zone and expanding to those different genres and atmospheres of sound?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes both ways. I feel like for classical musicians, like I'm really interested in just putting them in settings where they have to like deal more directly with an audience that's like having a good time and loud and drunk and boisterous and all that type of shit. And like, I think like, I'm going to play during my set tonight. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play a 3-minute sort of classical piece that I wrote in the middle of the rest of the set. And when I was at Terminal 5, I actually did my whole set. And this was Shake's idea. I did my set and then came out and did an encore to my own set where I did 15 minutes of just classical shit that I'd written. And so that was kind of her idea, but I've always wanted to put that kind of music in front of that type of audience. So, I mean, that's kind of like the part that's most exciting to me. And then, yeah, I guess it also just like, you know, putting, for both people's sake, I guess, having those musicians get to play for an audience that's like a little more engaged than the classical music audience is. And then also for the audience, hopefully to give them an experience they might not have otherwise. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully it, you know, gives people a different experience.
That's true, because like you said, like when you go to an 070 Shake show, the audience probably wouldn't expect you just to pull out, start doing those classical kind of things and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it would be more likely at her show than at most artist shows, but yeah, even there, I'd say it was pretty like a pretty unusual thing to do, and it's a credit to her for honestly having the idea to make me do that. It's where I want to go in the long run anyway. I want to be doing like symphonies in stadiums is what I always say, and like if that's one step towards that, then that's great, you know.
That's cool. One real quick topic I want to cover is also you put out another project with another group, the isomonstrosity project. So how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, so that's like another example of me just trying to put classical shit in front of an audience that's not used to that type of music, because I do think there's a bigger audience for it that's younger and like cooler than the normal classical audience. And the way it worked there was I got a bunch of contemporary like classical composers that I'm friends with to write pieces that I sort of collaged into a album with my friends Ellen Reed and Hugo Kohler, who are also classical musicians, and then just put like rappers and singers on it. It's mostly instrumental, but there's vocals on certain songs, just making something weird and also just making something that feels like it's pushing classical music forward as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. That was like the next question I wanted to ask about. That was like, you know, some of the featured artists on there like Vic Mensa, Danny Brown, Empress of, Zachary, Casey Hill. You basically had certain artists in mind that would sound great on these instrumentals and all this music that you had composed, basically, correct?
Yeah, just exactly, just people who are like used to singing over weird shit, who would be down to rap over, you know, their unexpected beat or whatever. That was really what I was thinking more, was artists whose fans are going to be more open to a project like this, and we're going to maybe click on it and be like, oh, that's different, you know.
One quick thing also about that is that I know one collaborator, composer who was part of that isomonstrosity project was Bryce Dessner, correct? Yeah. And let's take it back real quick. Is it true that you guys were connected through The Revenant?
Yeah, we worked on well, he did, I think, half of the score for The Revenant. I think he finished a score that had been started by somebody else, and I was just working for him as like a day job of just like helping him edit his sheet music and like not really creative work at all. Basically like the music edit equivalent of like copy editing. But yeah, so I'm credited on that movie, and it was cool. I like had not realized that's what the name of the project was when we were working on it, because it was just called Untitled, like they don't tell you anything. And not that, I mean, I'm sure if I had asked, he would have, but I just worked on a lot of different shit for him, so I probably just didn't remember. I was just kind of like, oh, it must be for some like small indie film or something like that. Me and my girlfriend went to see the movie because we just heard it was good, and I started recognizing the music halfway through the movie. I was like, this sounds so familiar, and I couldn't place it. By the end of the movie, I was like, I'm pretty sure there's that shit I did with Bryce, and we stayed for the credits. I was like, let's just stay for the credits, and it's like, my name was in the credits, so it was cool, yeah.
Now that's really cool how, you know, you ended up working on basically an Oscar-winning film. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio, that movie about where he basically fought a bear. Is the gist of it, basically.
Yeah, he has sex with a bear in that movie, which is super crazy.
Another big project that you were involved in within the past year was the Heroes and Villains project of Metro Boomin. And I saw online that you posted that I'm the first voice that you hear on this project, on the opening track for On Time. So how did you meet up and collaborate with Metro Boomin?
I met him through a guy named Che Pope, who is from Boston as well and is much older than me, but has just kind of been at it a while. He used to run Kanye's label Good Music, and I met him through the Kanye orbit and then stayed in touch. He's a super cool guy. I really like him. Great producer. And he just one time, I actually met up with him just to play on my album and get his feedback, and he was like, yeah, this is tight. By the way, I'm going to Metro studio right now. Do you want to just like come? And I was like, sure. So he introduced me, and Metro's like, well, if Che fucks with you, I fuck with you. So we stayed in touch, and I just did a lot of strings and vocals on a lot of different songs. Bunch of ones that got cut from that album. There's like 2 Don Toliver ones, another Chris Brown one, another John Legend one. But in the end, I think 2 of the ones I worked on got used, and one is that intro, which is the very beginning of the album, which starts with my voice, a bunch of stacks of my vocal, and then John Legend comes in. And then I also worked on Creepin, which has The Weeknd on it. And I hear that song on the radio every day, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a massive hit, Creepin', really, since it's been released and everything. It's crazy to believe that for that opening track On Time, that, yeah, out of all the people on the track, you have John Legend on that track, you have a Morgan Freeman interlude on that track, basically. Out of all people on the track, it's you who's the first voice on that thing where people listen to. So how does that feel?
It's cool. I mean, I think just because, especially with the strings I do, and also the vocal shit, like I do like really cinematic shit on my own stuff, and when I work on other people's stuff, people tend to hire me for the sound that I have on my own music, which means that I end up contributing like really cinematic sounding shit to their albums, and a lot of times people really want cinematic shit at the very beginning or the very end of an album, so it's just like, I just end up in that position a lot. I think I was the last sound on Tiana Taylor's last album. I'm the last sound on Astroworld. I'm the first sound on Snow Allegra's last album, but that just tends to be where people put my contributions in. It is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it really does. Like, you have a huge resume of like artists that you've worked with that have done behind the scenes arrangements, production, all this stuff is really impressive. Seeing the list of specifically that Spotify playlist you have of Johan's works, basically, where it's like, here's who I've worked with. Basically, check this guy off, check this person off. Everything is like really impressive to believe. Yeah.
I do kind of treat it a bit like a check it off the list kind of situation. I definitely am like, I'm always excited to get a credit or just something with an artist I've never worked with before, because I think once you have that, you have it forever. Yeah. And it's like, you're the guy who's worked with this, you know. And I like the range too. Like, it's not just rap. I've worked with like Shawn Mendes and Selena Gomez and shit like that too. So it's just like, I like just the fact, if you list the artists, it's like, how the fuck is there even anyone who's done this wide a range of artists? I think that's maybe the thing I'm most proud about when it comes to collaboration.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, you know, just even to be part of that process too, and seeing what they do for their processes and their ideas being put to fruition. It's really impressive. All right, so what is next for you, and what do you have planned for the remainder of the year?
Yeah, I'm going on tour right now. That'll be fun, and then I'm finishing my next album, which will hopefully be out by like early summer. So, trying to be prolific. Probably going to put a classical album out later this year. I put a lot of music out. I make a lot of shit, and I like to put it out in the world. So.
All right, yeah, that's really amazing. You know, looking forward to all that stuff. And then, yeah, one last thing, basically. The way how we connected originally was through our mutual friend, Ryan, or AKA ElToroRyan, who runs a roller coaster YouTube channel. And you guys connected through that, basically, correct? As you yourself are basically a roller coaster enthusiast, too.
Yeah, I'm a big roller coaster nut. There's a bunch of parks that I haven't been to that like any real coaster enthusiast really should have been to. Anytime I can get to a park within reason, I definitely do. I mean, we're going to pass by California's Great America later on this tour, and I think it'll be open just in time for us to go there, so that'll be fun. I am obsessed with just roller coaster content on YouTube and shit like that, which is how I get my thrills vicariously when I can't be at the park. So yeah, big ElToroRyan fan.
That's awesome. So you reached out to him about, putting one of your songs in one of his videos, correct?
Yeah, I had a song called Alone in the Theme Park where I'm just singing about being like sad and alone at the theme park. In real life, I go to the theme park alone all the time. I go to Six Flags Magic Mountain alone, and just like lately, there's always people in town who want to go, so it hasn't actually happened in a while. But a couple of years ago, I would just pull up on my own, like marathon, like 3 of the roller coasters, then just go back to the studio after 3 hours, which is like an incredible way to start your Tuesday. And so I wrote this song about it, and then just kind of made it about being in a breakup also, and just kind of going through it. I actually sent it to Taylor from Coaster Studios too, and I sent it to like a couple people. Just like, what do you guys like? Want to make like a video with just a montage of roller coasters and stuff like this and use my song, and Ryan was like down, but Taylor ended up hiring me instead to write a song for the end of his documentary This Is How We Roll about Rocky Mountain Construction roller coaster manufacturers, so that was fun too. And I just like, it's fun to be able to like bring my interests together like that. So.
I have a birthday with too many friends, but I can't see you in the party yet. It's so sunny and a fucking sad.
All right, yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that should wrap things up. So thank you, Johan, for taking the time to do this, and yeah, have a fun time tonight at your show. All right.
Big facts, everything just falls apart. Way back before we burned out, we used to wonder how we turned out. This is way too much I learned now. It's too much. And I don't think I'll ever get my shit together. People say at a place smoking late, I don't really even feel the pressure.
And that's about it for this episode of PODEKI with Johan Lenox. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch me talk with Johan. If you're a fan of Johan's music, just comment down below what you like about his music. If you're a fan of this episode, just comment down below what you liked about this. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And also follow me on Instagram and on TikTok at PODEKI Media. Thank you all, and I'll see you all later. This is PODEKI.